For the next 30 days, talk to yourself like someone you deeply care about. Not someone you criticize at every turn, not someone you shame into silence, but someone you are rooting for. Speak to yourself with love, patience, and belief, because your words shape your reality. Every thought you repeat, every message you affirm, becomes a part of the blueprint your mind follows. Tell yourself, I'm not behind, I'm on my journey. Say, I am proud of how far I've come, even if no one else sees it. Remind yourself, I deserve peace, I deserve love, and I'm allowed to outgrow what no longer serves me. For 30 days, replace self-doubt with self-trust. When you make a mistake, talk to yourself with grace, not blame. When you're tired, remind yourself that rest is not laziness, it's sacred. When fear tries to control the narrative, answer it with courage, not apology. Words are not just sounds, they are spells. So cast ones that lift, not ones that limit. Imagine if the voice in your head became your biggest supporter, your wisest coach, your most faithful friend. How much more would you dare to do? How much more peace would you carry? For 30 days, talk to yourself like you matter, because you do. And if you speak to yourself with power, your life will start to mirror that energy. The results won't just be in how you feel, but in what you attract, how you heal, and what you finally believe is possible. We often speak to ourselves in ways we would never speak to someone we love. When we stumble, when we fall short, when we feel uncertain, the voice in our head can become a harsh critic, quick to judge, quick to label, quick to condemn. That inner voice echoes old insecurities, outdated beliefs, and unresolved pain. It convinces us that we are not enough, that we should be doing more, that somehow we are always falling behind. But what if we chose a different approach? What if we replaced that criticism with compassion? Compassion does not mean denying our mistakes or ignoring our flaws. It means responding to them with understanding rather than punishment. It means recognizing that growth is messy and healing is nonlinear. It means giving ourselves the same grace we extend to others when they're learning, struggling, or just trying to make it through the day. When we replace criticism with compassion, we stop tearing ourselves down and start building ourselves up from a place of care. We begin to treat our inner dialogue not as a courtroom, but as a sanctuary. We allow space for softness, for forgiveness, for patience. We learn to hold our own hand through the hard days instead of pointing fingers at ourselves. Compassion doesn't make us weak, it makes us whole. And the more we practice it, the more we realize how powerful it is to have an inner voice that doesn't shame us into submission, but supports us into becoming. Every day you wake up, you are met with a world that tries to convince you that you are not enough. Through filtered images, unreachable standards, and constant comparisons. It's easy to internalize those messages and start measuring your value based on how much you've achieved, how much you weigh, how much others approve of you. But real worth isn't something that can be earned. It's something that already exists within you. That's why you have to affirm it daily. You have to speak it aloud, write it down, believe it even when it feels like no one else sees it. Because when you affirm your worth, you're not feeding your ego, you're feeding your soul. You're reminding yourself that you are more than your mistakes, more than your doubts, more than the temporary opinions of others. You're standing up against the noise and saying, I know who I am. These daily affirmations become anchors. They hold you steady when life tries to shake you. They become a shield against self-doubt and a compass toward your purpose. They're not just words, they are declarations. Each time you say, I am enough, you are undoing years of self-neglect. Each time you say, I am worthy of love, peace, and joy, you're reclaiming the parts of you that have been silenced by fear or shame. Your mind will believe whatever you feed it most consistently. So feed it truth, feed it love, feed it power. Say it in the mirror. Say it when you're afraid. Say it when you're tired. Say it until your inner world begins to shift and your outer world rises to match it. The words you choose to speak to yourself become the walls or the wings of your reality. When you constantly say, I can't, I'll never, or I'm not good enough, you build invisible cages around your potential. You reinforce barriers that often only exist in your mind. These limitations, repeated over time, become beliefs, and beliefs shape behavior. But the truth is, most limits are learned, not real. What if instead of speaking from fear, you spoke from faith? Instead of defining yourself by what hasn't worked, you began to define yourself by what is still possible. When you speak from a place of possibility, you open doors in your thinking. You allow new ideas to form, fresh energy to emerge, and opportunities to reveal themselves. You start asking better questions like, how can I grow from this? Or, what's the next right move? Instead of shutting yourself down with defeatist conclusions. Speaking from possibility doesn't mean being delusional or ignoring reality. It means refusing to be ruled by it. It means you acknowledge where you are, but you refuse to believe that's where you must stay. You begin to imagine your next chapter with hope, not fear. You begin to recognize that setbacks are setups, that failure is feedback, and that every challenge contains the seed of expansion. Possibility focused language shifts your energy. It inspires action. It invites resilience. It empowers you to try again, to pivot, to rise. The most powerful shifts often begin with subtle changes in self-talk, like replacing "I don't know how" with "I'm learning how," or "it's too late" with "now is the right time." When you start to speak possibility into your own life, you stop waiting for permission and start building momentum. You realize that you don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to believe there's a way forward and be willing to take the first step. Ask not. The words you choose to speak to yourself become the walls or the wings of your reality. When you constantly say, "I can't," "I'll never," or "I'm not good enough," you build invisible cages around your potential. You reinforce barriers that often only exist in your mind. These limitations, repeated over time, become beliefs, and beliefs shape behavior. But the truth is, most limits are learned, not real. What if instead of speaking from fear, you spoke from faith? Instead of defining yourself by what hasn't worked, you began to define yourself by what is still possible. When you speak from a place of possibility, you open doors in your thinking. You allow new ideas to form, fresh air but not energy to emerge, and opportunities to reveal themselves. You start asking better questions like, how can I grow from this? Or, what's the next right move? Instead of shutting yourself down with defeatist conclusions, speaking from possibility doesn't mean being delusional or ignoring reality. It means refusing to be ruled by it. It means you acknowledge where you are, but you to whisper, but you refuse to believe that's where you must stay. You begin to imagine your next chapter with hope, not fear. You begin to recognize that sex are setups, that failure is feedback, and that every challenge contains the seed of expansion. Possibility-focused language shifts your energy. It inspires action. It invites resilience. It empowers you to try again, to pivot, to rise. The most powerful shifts often begin with subtle changes in self-talk, like replacing "I don't know how" with "I'm learning how," or "it's too late" with "now is the right time." When you start to speak possibility into your own life, you stop waiting for permission and start building momentum. You realize that you don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to believe there's a way forward and be willing to take the first step. In a world that constantly demands bigger, faster, and louder achievements, it's easy to overlook the quiet victories, the ones that seem too small to matter but are actually the building blocks of transformation. We are often so focused on the destination that we forget to honor the steps that carry us forward. But those small wins, the ones no one sees, the ones you had to fight your own doubt to achieve, deserve to be celebrated loudly. Because progress is rarely a leap, it's a series of committed steps taken in moments of uncertainty, discipline, or courage. The morning you got out of bed when anxiety told you to stay under the covers. The time you spoke up for yourself when it would have been easier to stay silent. The choice to drink water instead of numbing yourself. The decision to begin again, even after falling apart. These moments are not insignificant. They are evidence of your resilience. Celebrating small wins is not about exaggerating success. It's about validating the journey. It's about acknowledging that you're showing up, even when it's hard. It reinforces the idea that effort matters, that consistency is worthy, and that change is happening even if it's not yet visible in big, dramatic ways. When you celebrate these moments, you fuel your motivation. You remind yourself that what you're doing is working. You train your brain to see progress instead of lack, and that perspective shift can mean the difference between giving up and moving forward. It's not about waiting for the world to applaud you. It's about learning to be your own cheerleader, your own source of recognition. Each time you honor a small win, you're building emotional momentum. You're strengthening your belief in your capacity to grow. You're proving to whisper that you're proving to yourself that even the tiniest of self-respect, discipline, and courage are shaping a future you can be proud of. Your mind is the place you live in every single day. It travels with you in moments of silence, during stress, in celebration, and in solitude. And yet, for so many people, that space becomes a battlefield rather than a sanctuary. The inner voice echoes with criticism, worry, guilt, or pressure, and instead of offering peace, it adds more noise to an already chaotic world. We whisper, but what if your self-talk became the one place you could always return to for calm, for comfort, for strength? To whisper. What if you made the way you speak to yourself a shelter rather than a storm? Seem to whisper. Not creating that kind of inner safe space doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means choosing how you frame it. It means meeting your thoughts with understanding instead of judgment, and offering yourself comfort in moments of fear instead of self-blame. It's the decision to soften when the world feels hard, to breathe when everything feels rushed, and to ground yourself in truth when your doubts try to shout over it. When your self-talk becomes safe, your entire world starts to shift. You become less reactive, more centered. You begin to trust yourself more deeply, because you're no longer abandoning yourself in difficult moments. Instead of mentally tearing yourself apart, you start to soothe, to guide, to support. You begin to write a new script, one that sounds like reassurance, like wisdom, like unconditional care. This kind of self-relationship becomes a powerful force in your life. It teaches you that no matter what's happening around you, you have a place inside of you where peace still lives. You can be your own calm in the storm. You can be the voice that says, "I'm here with you," when no one else is. And when that self-talk becomes consistent, kind, and rooted in self-awareness, you stop needing constant external validation. You no longer depend on the outside world to give you what you've already learned to give yourself. The relationship you have with your inner voice becomes your foundation. It anchors you, uplifts you, and holds you steady even when everything else is uncertain. From a young age, we absorb stories about who we are supposed to be, what we are capable of, and what we are worth. These narratives often come from parents, teachers, culture, society, or painful past experiences. Sometimes they are spoken outright. Other times, they are passed down subtly through silence, rejection, or comparison. Over time, these stories become internalized as truth. You start believing that you're too much or not enough, that love must be earned through perfection, that failure defines you, or that your voice doesn't matter. And without realizing it, you begin to live a life shaped by other people's fears, wounds, and limitations rather than your own truth. These toxic narratives don't just live in your mind, they shape your choices, your relationships, and your sense of identity. They create invisible ceilings you don't even know you're living under. They whisper in moments of doubt, "You'll never be more than this," and make you second-guess your worth, your goals, your instincts. But at some point, you have to stop and ask it, who told me this story? And why am I still carrying it? Detaching from toxic narratives means becoming conscious of the voices that aren't truly yours. It means identifying the beliefs that were imposed on you, not chosen by you, and deciding that they no longer get to write your future. It means giving yourself permission to reframe, to reject, to unlearn. This isn't easy because toxic narratives can feel familiar, even comfortable. But comfort doesn't always mean safety. It can also mean stagnation. Healing begins the moment you realize that your inherited identity is not your destiny. To whisper. You are allowed to question what you've been taught. You are allowed to stop apologizing for existing in a way that doesn't fit someone else's script. You are allowed to stop repeating generational wounds and instead become a new chapter, one rooted in truth, empowerment, and choice, not. When you detach from the stories that don't serve you, you create space to discover who you really are beneath the noise. You learn how to speak to yourself in your own voice, not the critical echo of someone else's disappointment or disapproval. You take your power back not by fighting the past, but by refusing to let it define you anymore. You begin to choose your own words, your own beliefs, your own standards. And slowly, the inner narrative begins to align with the person you are becoming, not the one you were conditioned to be. Not when you love someone deeply, your words become gentle, patient, and full of care. You offer reassurance when they doubt themselves, encouragement when they hesitate, and compassion when they make mistakes. You see their flaws but love them anyway. You remind them of their strength when they forget, and you speak to them in ways that build rather than break. So why is it so difficult to offer that same kindness, that same softness to yourself? Most people speak to themselves with a harshness they would never direct toward another person. They criticize, berate, and blame themselves for not being perfect, being fast but not being fast, smart enough, strong enough. But the truth is, you spend your entire life with yourself. You are the only person who is there for every single moment, every quiet thought, every hidden tear, every private victory. That relationship deserves tenderness. Talking to yourself like you would talk to the love of your life means honoring your humanity. It means forgiving your slip-ups with grace instead of punishment. It means cheering yourself on when you're unsure, reminding yourself of your worth, even when you're struggling. It means looking in the mirror and seeing someone who is not broken, not falling behind, but simply becoming. When you shift yourself, talk into the language of love, you transform your inner world into a place of healing instead of harm. You become someone who nurtures your own growth rather than shaming it. You learn to hold space for your fears without judgment, to soothe your anxiety with presence rather than panic. You seem to whisper, but you begin to understand that love is not just something you give away. It's something you must give to yourself consistently, especially when you feel the most unworthy of it. You stop treating self-care as a luxury and start recognizing it as a necessity. Speaking to yourself like this also deepens your self-respect. You're no longer waiting for someone else to validate your emotions, your decisions, to whisper, not, or your progress. You become the source of your own encouragement, the home you return to when everything else feels uncertain. And just like you would never abandon the person you love during their darkest moment, you stop abandoning yourself when things get hard. You stay. You listen, to whisper, not. You offer presence instead of pressure. You remind yourself that you're trying, that you're evolving, that you are still deserving of kindness, even on the days when you don't feel strong. Over time, this way of speaking reshapes the foundation of how you see yourself. You stop chasing love in places that only offer conditions, to whisper, not. You stop living to meet expectations that aren't yours. You begin to live in a state of self-alignment, where your inner voice becomes a source of truth and tenderness rather than fear and control. So for the next 30 days, let your voice become your anchor. Speak with intention, speak with love, speak with belief. Because the way you talk to yourself is not just background noise, it's the script your future follows. Change the voice, and you change the story.